Good evening, a gesunter winter, as much as one could say that belev shalom with what's going on, and it's the tip of the iceberg. What we've seen so far, as horrendous as it is, it's going to spiral out of control soon. And not just in Eretz Yisrael, internationally, which not just terror, we're talking about also the financial markets. You know, the situation is seriously powder keg for not just world war, but just total economic collapse also, and security collapse, even internally. See, in the general war, it's country versus country, and if you're deep inside your borders, you're safe, and that's not true anymore. There's infiltration. There's fifth columns of people that not only are anti-God, anti-Klal Yisrael, but anti the Western culture, anti the Western world, and living amongst us, as evidenced by the squad in Congress, the anti-Israel demonstration we had right here in our own country, let alone throughout Europe. The enemy is within. It's a very frightening matzav. And right now I'm not, this is not, what I said last night, I may have meant for just about anybody and everybody. I hope I offended a few people, because it shows that they got offended. There people are listening. But tonight's remarks is it's meant for a select few that, in the words of my Rebbe Moshe Shapiro, they want to be tzat lemala mea gimel tvachim oimei kamacharesha. Just want to be a little bit above, the 3 tvachim deep underground, right? So I just want to get, just be a Ben Aliyah, and be, do honor, right? Do honor to what it means to be a Ben Torah, what it means to be a Yid. Where shall we begin? Because I have a lot to say, but I just need the opening, to the little first hole, before the dam totally bursts. I heard a story from my Rebbe Moshe Shapiro that the Ponevezh Rav, after the Holocaust, was working to build Torah in Eretz Yisrael. He did a magnificent job of rebuilding the Olam HaTorah in Eretz Yisrael, after the Churban in Europe. He's taking a walk with one of his aides, one of his, Gaboim, one of his Shamoshim, right? And, talking about the situation, how there's no Torah in the world, Haya Olam Shamim after the Holocaust. And now we have to, and we've gotten to the state of Lo Rav Alechem Lo Atzam Alamayim Kim Lishma Es Dvar Hashem. The hunger in the world is not for bread, not for water, but Kim Lishma Es Dvar Hashem, tremendous hunger because of how it's so scarce. So the aide, the shamish of the Ponevezh Rav posed the following question, which actually bothered me always as a young man, prior to hearing the story. Why is that so bad, right? But people are hungry and thirsty for Torah, right? Look at the Mila. And it always bothered me, especially as I grew up on that Dveikus song, Lo Rav Alechem. Sorry, was it Dveikus 1, Dveikus 2? I don't remember. I think they scrubbed it since someone must have pointed out to them that, it's a curse. It's a Chazal regarded as Asira Torah Shetishakach Mi-Yisrael. Shneimar Lo Rav Alechem Lo Tzam Mayim Kish Mosar Hashem. But the person's asking, the type of question that's on anyone's mind, especially if they grew up on that song, like I did. So it's always on my mind, but people are hungry and thirsty for Torah. How can you call that bad? I mean, it's, It's too bad that Torah is not plentifully available, but people are hungry for it, so they'll go get it. And it's a wonderful thing for people to be hungry and thirsty for Torah. Right? So a person would think. So I, as a young man, thought, and as the way Ramesha told the story was, the Panovich Rav gave this person escorting him a piercing look that made him feel that he must have asked something very stupid. And the Panovich Rav explained what's the first thing that happens when there's a real hunger and a real thirst. What happens? That person quickly learns to do with less. He gets, if a person's hungry, he's happy with whatever he can get. Anything he could put into his body, anything. How, if it's very little and if it's not really so nutritious, he'll take anything, right? And indeed, a person, as we know stories from, I'm adding parenthetically, right? We know stories from after the Holocaust that, soldiers, unfortunately, inadvertently, liberating soldiers, America inadvertently killed surviving Holocaust survivors by giving them chocolate bars, all types of real food that their bodies couldn't take, after being so starved. So you learn to do with a little. And you might even have a contraction. They can't even handle real nutrition temporarily until you're rehabilitated. He says that's the tzara, right? That's the curse. When it's rav al lechem and some al mayim, people will be satisfied with the most minimal amount of junk food Torah. Rav said. And I heard the story before the article GAMAR came out. Heard this in the early 90s. When the plague was just starting. And if you're offended by what I just said, just do me a favor, click off. Stop listening to this video, right? Because it's not for you. It's not for you. I'm trying to speak to the Bnei Aliyah, right? And I had to tell a story, for my starting point, of understanding when we are asking ourselves, as we spoke about last night, why is this happening? And it's not just, that stam. We always have to ask ourselves, if any yid is bitzara, what did I do wrong that maybe I have a part of it because of Arvus? We explained that when it's Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, it's even much bigger than that. It's as a din of Kol Yisrael, and we explained that last night. All right, so now, we're here right now to take a hard look at ourselves. And last night I gave a message that might have been Shavel Chol Nefesh, perhaps, or more Shavel Chol Nefesh. But now I'm not talking to the Hamonam, that is Rav Alechem Vitzam Alamayim, right? And they're happy with some brain dead music videos that makes them feel spiritual, or kumzitzin, right? And bogus rabbis that just tell them, you cite us from Reader's Digest and tell them that that's Pnimius Torah, right? I'm not talking to you guys. I'm not talking to you. Your sprach is not my sprach. And I've given up on trying to talk you out of anything. Me, and also, not to put myself in the same guy, and the big Rosh Yeshiva of the door that I've spoken to about the issue, right? I'm not talking to you. You're offended by what I'm saying. You're bristling. So please do us both a favor and disengage from this video right here, right now. All right? I'm talking to, the real Bnei Aliyah, right? Or wannabe Bnei Aliyah. The Rossi Bnei Aliyah of umuatim, and they were always meant to be only a few. Or Shem Gambil, or whatever the Girsa is over there. Say Rossi Bnei umuatim, it was always meant to be that way. Like the Rambam Pirush HaMishnayos, says, you see it from the population in general. 99.9% of the population are fools. Chachma is something very rare. Chachamim are very rare. Kfar Amru Rabbeinu, Elef Nechnasim LeMikra, Mehem Meil LeMishnah. From them, only Asar LeTalmud. Only 10 out of 1,000 are really meant for Talmud. Only 10 out of 1,000. And from there, only Echad Yotze L'Hara. That's Ben Yakir Ephraim. So and that's part of the plague that we're having. That we're not realistic in the chinuch system. We want equity, and we're kind of like doing the same thing that's happening in secular. We want equity, and because of that, the standards just goes down and down and down because we want it. We want as it were, educational justice, and everyone should basically like everyone should learn the same curriculum, and it was never meant to be that way. And we'll talk about that more, because on the other side of this crisis, which I fear might be if we don't do tshuva quick, as we discussed last night, this could be a total meltdown, and a lot of moistus will close, for lack of security, lack of funds, or because they'll invent a new virus that you have to have shutdowns for. Everything's from the people that just want to shut down the Western world. Everything's on the table, and of course it's all bipnimius, a war against Hashem and against the Torah and Am Yisrael that carries these messages. Al Hashem v'al Mashiach, right? We're mamash in the days of Gog, who's going to take on God himself, and to take on God, you have to take on God in order to take down the Jewish people. Right? So, but we're looking towards a major meltdown, and we should start planning for the day after of how we want to reconstruct the chinuch system. And if I calm down, I'll lay out my charter of what I think it needs to be done, which Sakako what Chazal have always said to do, and was done until rather recent history. All right, but the point I want to get to, right, is the Rebbe Shalom is clearly not happy with us being better than nothing. Right? There's this tremendous fallacy out there, which is what the Panavisha Rav Baruch Kocho saw would happen. The Rav Alechem Tzamayim produces, people that if they do a good dance, a spontaneous dance in shul, right, or they kumzitz a lot, that they call that kirvas elokim. Well, it's just nothing. It's just dopamine. It's dopamine. It's nothing. The church offers that even better. The dopamine. The music, the ecstasy. It's music and ecstasy is not substance. It's a biochemical rush. There's no such mitzvah of having a biochemical rush. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he loves us. And maybe this is a problem also that a few generations of bad parenting, where kind of like we were put under the impression that a loving parent should have no demands from their child, not care, let them do whatever they want and just be happy with whatever they do. So I guess we project that on the Tata in Himmel. He doesn't want anything from us. He doesn't. So now you see how it worked out on earth, what types of kids we got, from not having any expectations, out of love for the child to reach their full potential, to become great, right? So of course, great in a way that fits with their personality, and al pi darko, with the kochos nefesh, he should excel with feed the kochos nefesh, that he could be excellent, right? He could be excellent, as the Chovos HaTalmidim says. I quote this all the time. In the words of Rav Yaakov, I'm paraphrasing, but different things, mikoach, different things. I heard about the Chovos HaTalmidim from my Rebbe Rav Yaakov One, Rosh Bnei Yisrael. The Piasetza was perhaps the Mishnah Achroina, although he didn't use those words, but I am collating from a lot of different things that he told me. This idea that that the Piasetza is the Mishnah Achrona on Chassidus, the Mishnah Achrona, right? The final psak, Soif Hara, and in the words of reality, he's the best exposition of what the Baal Shem Tov was about. And the Chovos HaTalmidim, who demanded excellence, to the fools, the kumsitz fools, who hear from their gurus, the fakers, right? Stuff that they're told is pimius. It's nothing more than stuff from chicken soup from the soul, right? And as far as content, and of course the zeal for Torah, right? And the endorsement for the Arveris. Okay, so they only know Klein Kalman, from the Kalabach tape about him, or stories that but anyone's actually learned his Sforim. He makes demands. He makes real demands. And just in a way that's matim to the Kochs HaNefesh. Every Jew, he says, is meant to be a Mitsuyan, a Kadosh, a Goin. So this guy's he's not so Ejo Lagoin. Well, he could be a big tzaddik. He could be a big masmid. He could be a big askin that, does a lot of toiv. We're a nation of Mitsuyanim, Malamichu Bnei Yisrael Mitsuyanim Sham. Of course, that means, that everyone knew. This is a yid, like Tziyun, as in, it was a simon. Of course, I'm taking it, I'm using it romantically, poetically. Right? He says that, the biggest lie, and this is the P.S. Setzner talking, right? Right? The biggest lie is to say a pashta yid. A yid is not pashut. He is, with a neshama from the Kisei HaKavod. And especially if it's a yid that learns Torah, he's a kadosh, right? And because our shorosh neshama is from a place higher than when the malachim come. Lech echos bechiv say kvari vachsem tshuva alludes to why Moshe would grab it together. You show them where you're from. Show them where you're from. That the neshama is chatzuva mitachas Kisei HaKavod. There's such thing as a pashta yid. We're mamlechas kehnim וגוי kadosh, and everyone could be a mitsuyan in their own way. I mean, anyone really read the Chovas HaTalmidim, which is his more basic book? Right? Anyone ever read it? Right? These people that talk chassidus, right? These shakronim, kazvanim, right? I just had an amazing shot this Rosh Hashanah, right? I was in Muncie. I wanted to get away from everything because I'm just so sick and tired of the mediocrity, but making like a frumkeit out of the mediocrity. That is the way a yid should be, and it's some type of Kalta Litvisha thing to demand excellence and demand real avodah. It's for Kalta Litvaks, A Hesa Pimistika Yid, gets up late, gets drunk, wiggles his tuchas by davening, if it's a Lebedika Niggin, and that's Pnimius, right? And that's real avodah, right? Can't handle that. I want to get away. So, and I had this epiphany, right? In the rotzens that we make. Shenil l'rosh v'lo l'zonov. I chop what it means for our door. Shenil l'rosh. We should serve Hashem with our head, a head full of Torah and machshavas tahiris, right? And machshavas begadlus abayre, right? And in general, just wanting to get ahead, right? Ahead, to grow, heavenward. V'lo l'zonov is supposed to be a tuchas shakalar, that you serve Hashem with your zonov, right? By dancing a mindless dance. Right? That's that's what it means, for our door. Right? I turned to the big Rosh Yeshiva because it's a growing movement. They call Neo Hasidism, whatever you want to call it. It's all delusion, shallow, delusional. And when the money runs out over there, it'll end it, because it's heavily greased by musicians and schnapps, and and when their money runs out, it'll end Kalohaya, right? Especially as people will have source, and then it won't be so easy to say that you're Makaba Kodesh Baruch and you're Moeda Kodesh under every circumstance. Wait till the Nisyonis come. Hashem Yirachem. I'm not wishing that, right? All right. So I was claiming to one of the Rosh Yeshiva, one of the big ones, one of the few that I hold from. He wrote back to me, listen, the Hamonam goes for it. We can't do anything about it. We come out against it. Two things, right? The Amonam doesn't have the sophistication to understand what's wrong with it, so they won't understand what we're talking about. And the gurus that we come out against will play victim. They'll cry victim. They're being pursued by the Litvisha establishment, that type of crapola, right? So we can't, and as Rosh Hashiva wrote back to me, real Baalei Nefesh will seek real Pnimius. And that's really what this video is for. I hope this reaches the real Baalei Nefesh out there, because the Tata in Himmel who loves us, but because he loves us, he has demands, he has expectations, and he gave us a big neshama, right, to attain greatness. And he gave us a Torah, with a Nishmas Yisrael and a Torah from Shmei Shemayim, from Rosh HaAtzilus, right? There's no limit to the heights that we can reach if we're willing to work, and if we're not satisfied with spiritual junk food. If we're willing to work, there's no end, right? It's just a big fallacy, a big lie that the door is so weak. It is, what do you want from the door? Everything is good. Anything's good. Better than nothing. The better than one of these shmendricks, one of these fakers. The better than nothing, that's the real chatchila, because you're just only a little bit better than nothing. And Akash loves that another, that BS that they're telling people just to reinforce their mediocre minus level of ruchnius and learning, or lack thereof, right? Right, so we have put in our heads, psychological blocks to any she'ifa for godless, right? And now what's worse with this neo-Hasidic BS, right? Pardon my French, but what's worse is that it's making a kilo of frumkeit. If you're mediocre, mindless, and get drunk regularly and do mindless dances, you're primistic yid. That's what we're up against, and we all know it. Now, of course, it's coming together with another disease called art scroll, and it's a disease. We're in stage 4 art scroll, right? And I said this a few months ago, and now I have no doubt that it's playing out right now. But if you're offended, I don't care. Just click off. Okay, I'm not talking to you. Anyone out there who's bristling, getting offended, there's a Hiliga art scroll, you go, please just click off. I'm not talking to you. I never meant to talk to you. I want to speak to Bnei Aliyah, right? You have to ask yourself a simple question. If art scroll is a good thing, why didn't Rashi do it? Why did Rashi leave his pure soul partial, right? It wasn't mafarish everything. Didn't touch every word, and he left it, a little bit cryptic. That we have to be medayik, and we have to use our head. Why did he do that to us? The Rambam didn't even try to do a Rashi. Rav Yaakov used to always say that the Rambam was the real conservative. He wouldn't even touch the Gemara. The Gemara was left for the Mitsuyanim. He wasn't even going to tamper with the Gemara. And the Gemara was designed. So you need a Rebbe. I'm not going to be. Rashi is like a half Rebbe. You still need a Rebbe for Rashi, but you're halfway there because a lot of the missing information that you have to get supplement by Rebbe is there. All right, without getting into, I'm not here to discuss the Omek Hadavar because that's a whole shir we had from Yaakov Weinberg on this, the big chiddush that Rashi was, that the Ram didn't even want to go there. Ram says, get yourself a Rebbe, and he will teach you the Gemara, and until you get enough from your Rebbe, you get the missing information that that you need a Messiah on. You get it from a Rebbe. Get yourself a Rebbe and learn Gemara, like a real man. And Ram didn't want to mess with that model, which was before Rashi or things like Rashi, right? So Ram didn't even want. So Ram was more conservative. Rashi was the radical that put a lot of things that you needed a Rebbe for on the page, but not totally. He didn't de-Gemara the Gemara. He didn't make it into a comic book like Art Scroll does. Because the Gemara was always meant to be our mental gym, right? From the Chazal that we quoted, from 1,000, only 10 make it to Talmud. Because the essence of Talmud is not, it's not the words, it's the technology. The Asur Nechras of Talmud is, you really could, you're a player. You ask, and you ask good. And you answer, but you read out, no, but that answer is flawed. And you're not just saying the words, not saying it, you are holding there. Your brain is on par. Your brain is going through that mental process. That's Talmud, right? Talmud was never meant to be like just a formula that you say. It was never just, it wasn't, and the challenge of the Talmud wasn't just the language, right? It's a certain, level of learning, and that was our gym, our mental gym, that we built our mental muscles. Right? and no one wanted to tamper with that, right? The Rishonim just wanted to either add their chidushim, resolve, results of their research, but they didn't want to make the Gemara not the Gemara anymore. Right? So now we have, everyone who hasn't finished Shas, everyone of their mothers finished Shas. What our school did help is that the Reform, now we have, we used to have something over the Reform and the Conservative, it's an easy advantage. We had background and they didn't. They didn't know anything. They didn't know lo chatzi davar from the Gemara. Now they know as much Gemara as the Orthodox. They also have, they use our school. The Reform rabbi, that's a chaplain at MIT. She does daf yomi out of a art scroll. Yeah. And if art scroll is the new standard, they could give an Orthodox rabbi, who's art scroll educated, a good run for his money. They don't have the advantage of having a whole battery of information they don't have. Now, there's still the real Mila of Chochmas Talmud, that it builds your mental kalim, and you have a sense of what's a real shah, what's not a real shah, what's a glatus or what's not a glatus svara. You have like a real orientation of, and a real sensor of what's glat and what's krum, right? But no one has that with art scroll. They're dealing with a very shallow people. We become very shallow people. So, of course, in that shallow environment of everyone being art scroll, I've met people that said, I've finished Shas 3 times. They don't know Tzurta de Shmaitza. When I hear a guy finish Shas, I know this guy cannot for his life, teach from a real Gemara and has no real knowledge of any single sugya well. And doesn't really understand why the kasha was a kasha, and why the havamina was only a havamina, and why the maskana, is the only way to go. Because of course not. It does it in art school. He does it in 40 minutes flat. And he doesn't see that daf for another 7 years. So everyone talks about the big seal mashas. When we know it's a big joke, but better than nothing. Better than nothing. We became the Kali sword that's better than nothing. When it's supposed to be mamlechas kehnim וגוי קדוש. Tzadikim, Chachamim, Nevi'im. That's Am Yisrael. We need a mega movement. Make Am Yisrael great again. And that's what Hasidus was. That's the amazing, that is the biggest sheker. Hasidus come to give us brain-dead Judaism. Anyone actually really learn Hasidus? Really? Any one of these people talk about, I'm Hasidus, this old literature stuff, I'm with the Hasidus. None of these guys actually cracked open a real sefer. Right? They read these yo-yo books, right? But the Svarim, they made demands of tikkun amidas, lishma, kavanis, right? Fire and brimstone. Read the Toldos, all the song of the Toldos, the demands that he makes, right? No Melech, and the tifkeit that there's like a sefer more. And I'm just talking for the first generation. Oh, and the Tanya. Chassidus is all about, the body is good also. Anyone actually read the Tanya? Anyone actually read the Geras HaTshuva? Where he says, the Arizal says you have to pay this amount of soimus, like a big number for this. And he's with Torah, you could get away with only this amount of soimus, but it was still a big number. Anyone actually read the demands that the Baalei Chassidus had? In the words of my Rebbe, Rav Yaakov Weinberg, also, who himself was a Hasidic, he was a Slonim Ra'enikel. And of course, aside from just being a very well-read man, but he knew Hasidus, also from the inside, having been a Slonimer. He shouldn't have appeared kosher mikulam, that's what they say, but Hasidus he knew. Okay, so, he says, the Hasidus was meant for the Mitzuyonim. Right, something got very confused. It's like one of the famous, historical, I don't know what you call it. It's like ironies, or some crazy, thing. The Musar movement of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was meant for every Yid. Musar, we're not talking about anything deep, just talking about being ethical. Musar was meant for every Yid. Right, and the original model was there'll be a Beis HaMusar. Every year could go learn some Musar from and meditate. What am I doing with my life? So the Musar movement was meant for everybody, but it didn't catch on. So there were Musar yeshivas. So it became something associated with yeshivas. It became in its day. It doesn't exist anymore. I hope I'm not offending, but it doesn't exist anymore. But there were Musar yeshivas, there was the altar, and he was watching you, and he trained you in your midas, and it became associated with yeshivas because only certain yeshivas and Rosh Yeshiva went for it. But it was meant for Klal Yisrael, right? But in the end, whatever there was wound up in the yeshivas, Sabarka tells Navardik, the Sabarka became Musar Yeshiva, right? Navardik, and one could argue that these Musar Yeshivas, because of the Musar, these guys were lamdonim and they were really frum and they kept the faith. And after the Holocaust, a lot of the alumni of the Musar Yeshivas were the ones that stayed religious and restarted Torah. Let's not, in the words of Rav Yaakov, when I point out, so the Muslim movement fails. It didn't fail, right? It depends how you look at it, right? Because, all the Torah was restarted after the Holocaust by and large, by alumni of the Musar Yeshivas, right? It's a very important point, right? So don't call it a failure. You have to just reframe it. Its historic mission was that it became a yeshiva shazach in pre-war Europe, even though it was meant originally for all Klal Yisrael. It became yeshiva shazach, became something synonymous with certain yeshivas, and the alumni of those yeshivas, of those Musar yeshivas by and large, were the ones that rebuilt Torah. Yeah? No small thing, right? As opposed to Chassidus, it was meant for the Mitsuyonim. Everyone knows, in real Hasidic form, there's a great deal of Kabbalah, but not just Kabbalah, and Musagim Elyonim, and Biurim and Ari, right? It was also, but demands for character perfection, right? Tikkun Amidas, including, not drinking too much, alcohol, and not eating too much. Real Tikkun Amidas, real demands. Right, to elevate themselves. Yeah, eat with kavanas, but eat a little bit with kavanas. And in a manner, you're only taking it with your Yetzer Tov. You're not taking it with your Yetzer Hara. So kavanas is a joke if you're eating it like a behemoth. This was meant for the Mitsuyanim, right? Except that, something happened that since Chassidus also wanted, they wanted a fan base, call it, or they wanted a trickle-down effect that the highly inspired individuals also kept the common folk afloat. That created it morphed into Kilo. All Yidden are good. Anything's good. It's a folksy thing. Hashem Yerachim. That was a big mistake. It's just a sheker b'chaz of Chassidus, and anyone who learns Chassidus be'emes, it was from Mitsuyanim, It was also, and it was a unique approach to the Torah of the Ari that, to focus on being Oved Hashem with that chokhmah, not just to have it as a chokhmah. Right? I'm not going to get into the details, but it was pretty excellent. The Baal Shem Tov Alts Talmidim was looking to recruit Mitsuyonim. The Magid only was looking for Mitsuyonim. And the original Talmidim around the Balatanya also. The truth is everybody. I don't know anyone from the first three generally looking for the Hamonam, right? Even though, the Priya Oretz, right? It was the big misnagid of Balatanya. The Priya Oretz, Menachem Mendel Vitebsker, and Avram Kalisker. You see what they demand from the people over there? Right? The demands that they had from their Hasidim. And don't tell them, you're nirpim, atem nirpim, right? You used to lecture them about being lazy and, Vayishu b'divrei, they quoted from the words of paraphrase, you're getting lazy, and I don't want to hear your excuses. They demanded, right? It's just the biggest lie ever. There's no one more embarrassed and more turning over in their grave than the Baal Shem Tov and the original Baalei Hasidus, with what Hasidus claims to be, Kolshkein, this joke called the Neo Hasidus, right? It's all sheker, right? It's not just Zio Fatera, all right? But that's what Klal Yisrael's into. And we have a very shallow Klal Yisrael that finishes Shas every 7 years, finishes Shas. What Shas did they finish? What shas they finish? What do they know? What can they really explain? Right? And they have art scroll heads, right? Shallow, right? Never built the mental muscles, right? So yeah, they heard Achrosh, they say it over like a parrot. They're not really holding in why the kasha is a kasha and why the teretz actually takes off the kasha. They're just told this is the kasha, this is the teretz, right? Right, and it's horrible, So now, I actually went into the rant segment before I got to the substance of what I wanted to talk about tonight, because it's not just a general rant, right? And a general rant, and Keel, to God forbid say, and you see I was right, because if everything's good the way it is, the Rebbe wouldn't have brought this tzara, right? It's more than that, and this is what I want to get into, right? The aside from the fact that we are failing in our historic mission of being a great people, a holy people, mamlechas, kehנים, וגוי, קדוש, not tuchas shucklers, right? Not drunken, tuchas shucklers that talk sweet little nothings and call it pnimius, and it's not. Right, and it's just a busha and ziyuf hatera, and a pagam and covered hatera, right? And yeah, the Rebbe Shalom loves you. Loves you doesn't mean that he has no demands from you. Loves you is not that he accepts better than nothing. Loves you is that me'avasol sanu, he gave us a mission to save ourselves and save the world, and to be megala kvod shamayim in the world. Ad Mesiras Nefesh, and that's Ma'avosa also that he gave that mission. The Kerav Tunnel is Shimcha Hagadol. Shimcha Hagadol is the Torah, the Ein Sof. Shmo. It's Gematria Rotzen. Right? Rotzano is Baruch, which is the Ein Sof, right? Shmo. Shmo is Besod Hu, Shmo Echad. Right? Right? We are failing in our historic mission of being a great people, right? That first of all, we constantly evolve into more and more learned and spiritual beings. But we also, with that, have a ripple effect on the whole world, and we cause hashras hashchina in the world. That's our job. Or lagoyim. That's our job, right? And we're being called to task for it, and that's why, as the Navi says, I'm paraphrasing the exact Lashon Navi says, I only know you and I only love you from amongst all the nations, all the families on earth. And that's why I take you to task on all your sins. Yes, he loves us. And it's a real love, of giving us stature and power and expectation and a mission. And yes, he loves us like a real parent should love a child, with expectations that this little kid should become a great man. And that's, and to chosech shifto shalom beno, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child. It's from the wisdom of Shlomo Melech, I do believe. Is it? Yeah, that's a possible. Chosech shifto shalom beno. And the Rebbe has demands from us, and now of course he gives us times of call it, there are respites, right? Because the Holocaust was not too long ago, but now he's taking us to task. Not that we didn't have a few bumps, since the Holocaust also. Now he's taking us to task. Are we really fulfilling our mission, right? But I want to get to the main point I want to talk about, right, is what is certainly not understood by the neo-Hasidic fakers, and the art scroll people, and I'm not talking. If you're one of those people, please click off. I'm not talking to you, right? That there's tremendous avoda in limud ha'iyun, bepilpul, ba'omek, right, in halacha, right, in any research of any chelek of Torah, and certainly in Kabbalah. And we alluded to this last night, but I want to go through this the Ariya Kodesh, Rav Chaim Vital's made on him that, aside from being the biggest Makubal, he was the biggest Lamdan of his door. On every sugya in Shas, he had 7 mahalachim. He could explain every sugya 7 different ways, right? Like a Shir Klali, Shir Klali explained the whole sugya. He had 7 of them on every sugya, right? 6, different ones, Alpi shots, like 6 different Pulim, right? Connected the 6 days of the week. And the 7th one was Alpi Soid, connected Yom HaShabbos. To explain every Gemara also, mitzad, what its parallels in the higher dimensions, right? The sugya of how the Torah is, Tadaber b'tachtonim v'tirmos b'elyonim, right? So, and he was the biggest in Pilpul, right? And Rechaim Vital adds that that every morning he would be mefalpo, and he worked on the iyun, kusha teretz. I know that's not a good svara. No, it's still not perfect because it doesn't stem perfectly over there, to the point that he was schwitzing. He was drenched in sweat. The kol kach lama, right, explains of Chaim Vital, right, because everything that's difficult and not easily understandable, why is it that way? Because there's a block, which comes from the Sitra Achra. The block is both in you and also in the world, right? The idea is now, because the block is only in you if you're the only guy who doesn't understand it, right? But if it's like an idea that is, everyone is, kind of fuzzy about it. So there's, in that case, right, there's blockage, cosmic blockage in the individual, right, and in the olamas. And with the amelus batera, you break the block. And just like you broke the mental block, you broke through, you had a breakthrough idea. It parallel also in the olamas, it's a breakthrough. And the idea got more clarified within the air that we breathe. And that's the secret. That's also true. Arif said the Yesod. I've seen a lot of Sfarim. I may have seen Sfarim that predate the Ari. That, for you was a big Chiddush. For you was a big Chiddush. When the K'tzai Sachoshim came out, as an example. Right? So it was a big Chiddush. It had a very innovative approach in explaining and analyzing, which very much the modern Derech HaLimud, Reb Chaim, his basic books that he was working off were, K'tzais and Nesivos, the Telzer Shirim. The Telzers were the ones who popularized learning K'tzais together with the Sugya, not just as a Pirush and Kosher Mishpat, right? So it was a big, very innovative book. The Yad Melech, one of my favorite Sfarim on the Rambam, written by a grandson of the Noida B'Yehuda. So he writes there, he likes looking at K'tzais HaChoshen Shiotza Lidon B'Davar HaChadash, right? K'tzais, big hit, right? As a K'tzais example, not to take away from other Sfarim that, but he was definitely a tipping point. The K'tzais HaChoshen and Sfarim that, were parallel to it in the same time and the same way of thinking, like the Nesivos. These were tipping points for him that evolved into modern day lumdus, right? Yotza lidom adavar chadash. So now, before Art Scroll, back in the good old days when we were learning, we had to figure things out, because no one spoon fed us. So we had to build the mental muscles, right? So it was not uncommon. I don't know what goes on today, Hashem Yerachim. It wasn't uncommon for it to be mechaven to a k'tzais. So as hard as we were working as Bachrim, right, we're still not the K'tzai Sachoshen. He wrote the Shav Shmaitza as a Sheva Brachas Torah. He was only 17 when he wrote the Shav Shmaitza. That's what he writes. Unbelievable, right? So we Nishkin K'tzais, right? We're Mechaven. But for him, it was a big Chiddush, right? So the... So much so that I do believe, where did I read this? I wrote it actually Shai Agnon. I wrote this in one of the books of the Shai Agnon. That Rav Meshulam Igra was a super genius. Rav Meshulam Igra met the K'tzais, and the K'tzais wanted to present it with his book, right? And the K'tzais wrote the book, the Mesiras Nefesh, right? He wrote a sefer, and that was a big hit, but he wrote the Mesiras Nefesh. It's not ideas that just top of his head. This was b'mesiras nefesh, and to, he was so poor, he didn't have money for firewood, so to make sure his inkwell wouldn't, bang, dip the pen, make sure his inkwell didn't freeze. In the winter, he used to keep his inkwell on his body, but under his clothes, by his body. So the body heat should keep the inkwell liquid. So he wrote the K'tsois b'mesiras nefesh. So he comes to, so imagine what a big Kiddush it was. So he comes to Rav Meshulam Igra, and Meshulam Igra says, tell me 2 or 3 of your greatest hits. Right? He told him, Meshulam Igra, being a super genius, calculated the way the K'tsois HaChoshen thinks, and they say, okay, what else do you have a shtickle on? So based on the 2 shtickles that you told me, I'll bet you said this. And he was right every time. But that was at the time attributed to the fact that Meshulam Igra was a big genius. And the story has a very sad ending, that the K'tsois said, Chalisha Da said, why did I write this whole sefer? I should have just told you 2 vorts, and you would write the rest of the sefer for me, right? And I had to keep the And Rav Meshulam Igra felt so bad that he offended the K'tsois HaChoshen, who I have saying he worked so hard in the sefer that at Sof Yomov he fasted at least once a week to be mechaper for having offended the K'tsois HaChoshen, inadvertently, by showing off that he could be mechaber what he wrote to. All right, so in that there was a big Kiddush, only a super genius like Rav Meshulam Igra. It was like Meshulam Igra was something else from what I've read about him, which Chabad, we have very little material from him. His son, just Layla, right? So it was a very big Kiddush. Only a super genius like Rav Meshulam Igra could figure out, but that wasn't that day. Then 200 years later, in Batei Midrashas, think about it. Maybe we could explain this. You see, it's a K'tsois. That's true. Because, in its day, it was a big Kiddush because that block was there. The K'tsois was Masalik, that block. But a lot of people who still grew up with that block, it wasn't originated, by habitual thinking. They didn't immediately, feed into how the K'tsois removed the block from the world, and now it's accessible to everybody. So people of his own generation didn't automatically necessarily pick up on it because of habitual thinking. If you, if you already grew up, most of your years of learning, you didn't, you just gave up on that idea as being undefined, and you got comfortable and habitually thinking of it that way. Right? Hard to kick old habits, especially mental habits, right? So, but we have kids growing up bichlal in the energies of how the K'tsois was masalik those klipas. So they're mechaber to a K'tsois, right? It's a big tikkun. The limud of iyun, to break through kasha, to be mavayar things. It's called milchamta shel Torah. You ever ask yourself, why is it? GAMAR says in Makkos, it's like always has to happen. Afilu avu b'no, rav tamido, nasim oivazah. They become and they start fighting. So the Ramchal explains, because there's a cosmic mission that they're tuning into. Kasha teretz, it breaks the klipas, it breaks the cosmos. So you raise a difficulty and I resolve it. So it's like you held up a target by raising the difficulty, and I resolved it, I shot, and I blew up the target. And I got rid of the cosmic block. It makes tikkun. And that's the sort of milchamta shel Torah. Milchamta shel Torah is, it's the war of Torah, the war against who? So the chavrusas play it out. The makshin is, as it were, raising the targets and raising the challenges, and the tartzin breaks them. So, and there's some result if there is taka resolution, right, at the end. So there's clarity. There's cosmic clarity. It's sort of milchamta shel Torah, and that's why lozad shenasim of himzelzed. They were fighting like cats and dogs, and then at the end they're even closer because they were really working there. They were fighting like not real fighting. They weren't enemies. They're nasim of himzelzed, but they're like shadow boxing. The real enemy was the person in the middle, the non-clarity, which was caught in the crossfire of the two chavrusas. And in their sparring, right in there, sparring, and their milchamta shel Torah, what gets eradicated is the lack of clarity, and then they just come even closer together, even closer together because they really work together. Their fighting was to really catch the Sitra Achra in the crossfire between them. The one caught in the crossfire is always the one that suffers the most. And they realize that now the crossfire, that the disclarity that was between them is removed, and they even become closer friends. Mulchamta Shotar and Ramchal in his Pirush and Adi Rambam explains how certain kashas and tutzim, certain arguments, certain pilpulistic moves is like a romach, because Rajbi tells his Talmidim, like, we're going to do Milchamta Shotar, we metak in the world, right? And so there's Shir and Romach, and there's shields, there's spears, there's swords, and it's all different types of kashas, different types of terutzim, or all keneged, different types of weapon. The different populistic moves are different weapons to destroy the lack of clarity in the world. But if you don't use your head and you learn shallow, right, you're not doing the work. You should look for what still needs explaining. Look for it, right? And if you see an explanation, right, so you're not satisfied with it. I want to see it for myself. Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a better way to explain. That work is real work. That's cleaning up the world. And it's called Milchamta Shel Torah, the site of Milchamta Shel Torah. And so going back to Rav Tal, is that that the Ari learned with Pilpul to break all the klippas. And in the afternoon he learned fast, Bekias. And he said you can learn Bekias and be safe, that no krumkeit is getting into your head, if earlier in the day you cleared the air cosmically with the pilpul that you had. So hence, maybe that's the makor for the yeshivish minhag, iyun in the morning and then bekias in the afternoon. That of course the bekias shouldn't be mindless, right? But at least if you cleared the air for the day, you're safe. That you could learn quicker and not be worried that krumkeit is getting in. But if you learn shallow all day, shabeshta kavan the all, you have to be worried that krumkeit got in, right? So, but there's another thing. When you learn iyun, when we talk amelus, right? That's Nefesh HaChaim explains. That's when the neshama sparks up. If you just learn Torah with the brain, right, which is with whatever the brain understands, whatever you pick up, and it's all good, right? The neshama never sparks up. The neshama leaps into action when you do amelus b'Torah, right? And then the neshama sparks up. So side fact, the neshama will spark up to augment your intelligence, and that's how you'll find the deeper pshat, right? But also because the neshama sparks up, it purifies your body. When the neshama is like slumbering, so your body is just siphoning life support from the neshama. The neshama sparks up by Talmud Torah. It's metayer the guf because it's sparked up. So first augments the mind, but as a spillover effect, it's metayer the person. And that's what the Mishnah says, in Pirkei Avos. So it sparks. So zochator marbe umal bashto anavir. You even get good midas. It's easier to condition your body to feel youre Shemayim and to feel another and all midat kol midah nechayna, right? Well, when you learn iyun and it causes the neshama to spark up, right? So step one, the neshama sparking up augments the intelligence, right? And that's how the chachamim becomes so wise. Everyone starts off with the same IQ, roughly, not always necessarily, right? But but as always say, we're amazed, because he's in the habit of, because of his amelus, aside from building the regular mental muscle, biochemically speaking, any muscle, including the mind that's used, gets built up, as opposed to it's not used, it atrophies. But there's another zgula that amelus, it challenges of it, pushes the stress of what the neshama gets involved, and the neshama sparks and augments the touch, has a spillover effect over the whole guf, and that therefore has a spillover effect on your davening, on your learning, on your mitzvahs, and on the energy that you put into the world that dispels evil, that dispels the darkness. Right? Now, we spoke about last night about Libud Azar for those who are Ra'ui, right? But, you ask yourself, you see, Am Yisrael going to war, and you want to participate in the war. And so now we mentioned the Gemara. Right, right, the ones that empower our soldiers. Now, maybe it's not just because Limud Torah is a good deed, so it's a source for the soldiers. It's deeper than that. There's a deeper relationship. The goyim, these animals, they get their power from the Sitra Achra. The Sitra Achra is their power, right? If with our learning, be'iyun, be'omek, be'pilpul, we break the Sitra Achra like we explained, but that's only with limud be'omek. If you just learn, without ever exercising the mind, so you're leaving the world the way it was. The world's not changing because of your limud Torah, right? Because you're just accepting it, as is, so everything will remain status quo. You have to look for the new Havana, right? And you have to push to the stressing point. Change yourself, you will also change the world. And you go with the we say you break the klipas, so you're cutting off the energy source of the enemy army, because they get their koch from the Sitra Achra, right? The Jewish soldiers get their koch from the Torah. Right? You defeat the Sitra Achra in Pilpul, it'll play out on earth that the Jewish armies will defeat the Goyim because they got stronger from your limud, and the opposing army got weaker because they get their koch from the klipas, and you broke the klipas with your Pilpul and your Imek and your Iyun and your Amelus. So if we don't learn deep, if we go with the art scroll rag that makes us a shallow, retarded people, right, we are deserting the Israeli soldiers. So of course, someone who's, I'm not talking to someone who has an IQ of 70 or less, okay? You are, click off, right? Click off. I'm not talking to you, right? You were never meant to learn GAMAR, perhaps. For you, Rambam is good, right? I'll just mention Beremiza. You find throughout the Gemara, Tani Tana Kamed Rabbi Yechon. Who's the Tani Tana? The Tanaim were dead already, right? Who's the, that means that they were, guys, they weren't the best in Pilpul. They weren't cut out for it, but they were from the Mea Nichnasim LeMishnah, right? They weren't from the Asar Nichnasim LeTalmud, full time, right? It wasn't really their cup of tea to do on a full time basis. So they were, they were from the Mea Nichnasim, but they're very good at memorizing, the Mishnayos and Brises, right? And they used to read off, mentally, just read it up in front of, Tani Tana. And this is going on even in the yeshivas of the Goinas. A letter writes from Roshir Gaon. One of the Goinim writes a letter about the Sidrei Yeshiva. There's the Tani Tana. They still had it. These guys had really good memories. They weren't cut out. And he said they don't do too much Talmud. It's not their thing, right? They do a little bit because every yid has to do a little bit, Kafi Rochav Levavo, right? They found their excellence. They found their niche in Tani Tana. So these are people that the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah for. Learn Mishnah Torah, right? The Chiyuv Mishnah is universal, even though sadly only 10% get there from the Kinderlach that go into Mikra. So out of 1,000, only 100 go to Mishnah, right? But theoretically, it's a much bigger pool, and anyone could learn the Mishnah Torah. And when we get over the crisis, when we make it over, we really have to redesign the yeshivas that there's enough with this equity that everyone learns the same thing. Same thing with it. We have the same problem with secular education. Why does everyone have to learn the same curriculum? If a guy wants to be a mechanic, let him learn one curriculum. A guy wants to learn, be a great astronomer, let him have a different curriculum. There's just on the most basic elementary level, there should be equity, for lack of a better word. And then when we reach the high school level, people should go each one in their maslul. And that's even in second grade, that's culture and Torah studies. And whatever. I don't want to talk about my charter of how, everyone should be placed the chanoch lenar pi darko, right? And not everyone, everyone has to have equal opportunity to learn the same Gemara. No, not lav dafka. Opportunity, yes, but only if you make the grade. You always have the opportunity to sharpen yourself and then enroll. Right? Equal opportunity for those, but in a opportunity in a meritocracy. But otherwise, if a person doesn't make the grade, he should not have access to the same material as someone else. He could get it later in life. A person's kishronos could change, right? We don't have to label a person that he's only a Mishnah Yid. He's only good for the Mishnah Torah. He should learn a lot of halacha, right? We don't have to label people, right? Just leave it fluid. Right now, you're not making a grade. Get better at it. They may later in life, the biochemistry of the brain changes. A person, the Chazon Ish said that. A person, that was considered to be a dunce kol yomov could instantly become a big Baal Kishrin, because, we've seen this, people intellectually blossom, they're late bloomers. But all of a sudden, it's like, you wouldn't believe that they were bad in school earlier, bad in academics. People are late bloomer. We just have to be very open and fluid that a person can switch tracks at any time when they're ra'ui. Okay. All right, but now getting back to the point, right? If we want to participate in the milchama against the sitra achra, so anyone who is capable of learning Torah ba'omek, be'emes, right? You are abandoning your post by going with Art Scroll. You are abandoning your post by being a tuchas shakler in one of these shtiblach, right? You are abandoning your post. You're deserting your post. You're deserting Klal Yisrael. If you are cut out to be a Ben Aliyah, right now is the time, not just because it's your mission. It was like your moichel and your olam haba. I want to be a lazy guy, which Mr. Sharm says is so stupid. Right? A little olam haba is good enough for me, right? So let's say, you want to make that mistake, and it's a totally illegitimate mistake, and kulo atzas hayetzer. But now, if you go with that thinking, I'll be a poshta yid, which we said is an obscenity, right? Right now you're not allowed to. You're a deserter, right? Because you could be participating in Milchamta Shel Torah, right? You could be participating in Milchamta Shel Torah and weaken the klipas, which could save the life of an Israeli soldier, and his blood is on your head. So it's not just you're not fulfilling your mission so well, right? Right now, you are causing sakonas nefashos, right? And then same thing goes with tefillah. I read in one of the svarim of Kamadumani, it was from Rabbi Arla Rota, from Tolas Aaron, from I don't think it was from anything. I think it was from his son or son-in-law, someone from the Tolas Aaron line. He wrote a lot on tefillah, right? And he says, when you work hard to be mechaven, right? It's a purifying experience, because that his gabrus, to focus, also breaks the klipas. Aside from the fact that when a person's ra'ui, when a person's ra'ui, and he could be mechaven kavas u'kohen, but you have to be ra'ui, and because if you're not ra'ui, don't touch it, right? But ra'ui means you understand what the yisoros mean, you really understand what the kavanos mean, and there are different levels. And then you have to do the work. You got to do the work. Anyway, you do the work, even though it's painful. Kavanas are not high, it's a lot to concentrate. It's not easy. Even when you know what it means, it's not easy. It's a lot to hold in mind, and you want to just get through the words already. You got to hold back, and you got to, because if you have to think a certain amount of thoughts per word, it's work. It's hard. Kavanas is not, a flighty. It's not a trip. It's not a spiritual trip. I'm telling you, it's not. It's work. It's a lot of work, and that's when you're roi and when you know what these things mean. Can't be mechaven kavanos, so we don't know what it means. It could be chas v'shalom avodah zarah, chas v'shalom, right? Yeah, it's when you're ready, but it's work. It gives you a headache. It's a headache. It's not a high. It's a headache, but it's work. So he says over there. I can't remember if it's from Rabbi Arla himself or one of his. Someone in his family, right? Says, that headache that you get, that you might even come schwitzing, it's mitaher the guf. That effort is mitaher the guf. It unleashes the power of Torah. It brings tahara to the world. And that tahara breaks the ruach hatuma, and that's also what kavanos do. It's like you aim your tefillah exactly to where it has to hit and make a roshim and break a klipa and open things up. You do that, so you're defeating the sitra achra, you're cutting off the lifeline of Israel's enemies. And your success of bringing or adds koach to our soldiers and everyone who's fighting for us. So my call to the Bnei Aliyah is, get with the program. Get with the program. you could get by, especially in this art scroll neo-Hasidic generation. You could get by in very little, and the Rebbe doesn't demand. Rebbe loves us. He's not demanding anything, which is all sheker, because of sheker ziyuf hatayra. Rebbe, because he loves you, right? He has demands from you. The chvodenu, that we're shutfo b'maiser, he runs the world, the fi our avoda, which is the greatest honor. That's love. But the greatest honor comes with great responsibility and consequences. And I'm just telling you right now, so even though we live in a world that, of no standards, right? Mamish, no standards, no demands, right? So you could get by because you're a bright guy. But if you just get by at this time, im hacharesh tacharishi leis kazos, you hold back, just do enough to get by, because we live in a very mediocre generation where mediocrity is practically celebrated. Shem Yerachim, you are a deserter, and Jewish blood is on your hands. It's time to, Yaakov, right? So we have to be Hakol Kol Yaakov, the Kol Torah, Kol Tefillah, but Kol Torah be'emes. I lectured about this at a Sheva Brachos. Kol Torah is not just the words, not just title, the Kol Torah. The Kol is the Umek HaMachshava. The Kol has to come out. The Kol Torah. Kol Tefillah, which is the Umek HaKavana. We got to get to work. If we're capable of it, we're chayav to do it. And with that, we will bring, Yisrael Nosher Ba'Hashem, Chuas Olamim, Mikoch the Kol Torah, Mikoch the Ora Torah. The Kol Torah is Kol Hashem Bakoach, the Kol Hashem Shover Arazim, and the Or Torah is Misalik the Chayshech. It'll bring Koach to Chayalei Tzahal, and it'll take you, be Machlish to Sitra Achra, and Chol of Palestine, Mary, Kareis, of Hashem Amlucha, Bnei Aliyah, get to work.